Hey there and welcome to Broader Tales. Tonight, we bring you a chilling collection of horror stories set against the soothing sound of rain. Before we dive into suspense, drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. If these stories send shivers down your spine, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Get comfortable, let the fear slowly take over, and tell us if you enjoy this kind of storytelling. Now, sit back and relax. We're about to begin. There's a reason they're hiding it from the public. Cosmic signals, transmission anomalies, whatever you want to call them. Soon they'll have to come clean. At least about parts of it. There's no way they'll be honest about the worst of it. Why it's been kept secret for so long. I don't expect this recording to stay accessible for very long. I bet my equipment's been monitored for years now. So listen carefully. I want you to be ready. I used to be an acoustic engineer for SETI, analyzing potential signals from deep space. That's why it was such a shock when two people in unmarked black suits showed up at my apartment, telling me I'd been selected for a new position with ISDRA. You'd expect they'd be looking for a quantum physicist or an astrobiologist. I thought it was some elaborate prank until one flashed a badge I'd never seen before. The other one stretched just enough to reveal the gun hidden beneath his jacket. I wasn't even particularly good at my job. Maybe that's why they chose me. No awards, no family, no real friends, not even a goldfish. Guess that was all the resume they needed. Had to take a special shuttle for my first day. New living quarters on site, they said. Pack lightly. My new post was at the Event Horizon facility. Maybe you've heard whispers about it in conspiracy circles. It's a government installation on the far side of the moon, where no Earth-based telescope can see it. Officially, it doesn't exist. It's where important officials would be evacuated if something catastrophic threatened Earth. Allegedly, it's operated by the International Lunar Commission. So why would I work there? Because they've been lying. Inside the facility, there are miles and miles of pressurized corridors and chambers, expansive enough to create a functioning lunar city beneath the surface, safe from radiation and micrometeorites. There were advanced labs, data archives, manufacturing plants, spacecraft hangars, and medical bays. They needed someone to document and analyze sounds. Didn't want to waste someone more qualified on listening to recordings and acoustic patterns. I don't think I was even really working for ISDI, even if nobody said otherwise. At first, I didn't really understand what I was listening to. I wasn't stupid enough to ask questions. I assumed they chose someone who couldn't make sense of it on purpose. I'd be taken to a sound-isolated chamber where there'd be some machine component or electronic device sitting on a table. I'd record its emissions, supervised by people in lab coats who would direct me to certain frequencies or patterns. Over time, the devices got more complete. Once I recorded some sort of crystalline oscillator that emitted a frequency that shattered my headphones after I removed the protective dampeners. Burst of blue energy. Burned my ears pretty badly. Had to switch from digital equipment to analog after that. And then one day it clicked. Maybe a year in, they had me go to the medical bay. suited me up in a full isolation gear with an audio dampening helmet. I was to record sounds during a procedure. An autopsy. I remember thinking they must have been examining a victim of some failed technological experiment. But then they wheeled out the body. It wasn't human at all. It was small, vaguely person-shaped, but it was put together wrong. A sick part of me almost laughed. It looked like a movie alien big eyes, enlarged head, grayish skin. But then they started cutting into it, and it was very, very real. I had to record each incision, the sliding of organs, the subtle vibrations from its tissue. I drank myself unconscious that night. The facility was large enough to have a bar, even if I couldn't leave to get my own liquor. My reaction must have been acceptable, because instead of my regular work the next day, I was sent to a large conference room. Needed an acoustic specialist's input, they said. Made sure I understood not to discuss this with anyone else. We were given code names. The head of the project was Falcon, a weathered older man with a Boston accent. There were scientists, quiet, intelligent people whose code names I barely remember. I was introduced to Dr. Winters, Captain Gale, and Major Storm, our future astronauts. I was given the name Sonar. Captain Gale told me this was because a sonar uses sound waves to see what's hidden beneath the surface. I wondered if he thought it was clever. Falcon informed us that we were a small part of a greater project. Greater as in scope, but also greater as in grand importance. We were assisting with the development of a manned, faster-than-light spacecraft, Project Orion. The technology I'd been recording had been reverse-engineered and reconstructed, all with the purpose of developing FTL travel. We were almost there. Project Orion was designed to send a crewed vessel to Proxima Centauri and back. Orion and its crew would travel to our nearest stellar neighbor, orbit for about 3 months, and return. This was when I decided to speak up. "Why am I here?" my voice cracked. "Because," Falcon replied, "we need someone to teach our astronauts about acoustic detection in unstable environments. We need evidence of living extraterrestrials." So my job became training the 3 astronauts as they underwent preparation, teaching them about sound recording techniques in unpredictable conditions with unknown subjects. Orion's detection equipment was more advanced than anything I'd ever worked with, but there was no data to program algorithms to identify alien sound patterns. We had no idea what we might be listening for, really. We'd only ever analyzed their ships after they'd been destroyed. Things became less eventful for a while. Everyone was focused on Orion. I saw ships enter the hangar, though. Not ours. Long, cigar-shaped craft built from metal that looked like it had been compressed and folded and melded together countless times until it became smooth. Bodies inside, without any evidence of doors or seams. Captain Gale told me rumors about ships rising out of the ocean, about animals found drained of blood, with bones removed without visible wounds. Missing people. He shared this in whispers, in written notes, in looks and gestures. I wasn't supposed to know. He felt sorry for me. So much information without any answers. One night he came to my quarters. It was close to the launch date. He told his superiors he wanted to thank me for my help. He asked for something to take with him, so he could think of me out there in the void. I gave him my grandfather's antique pocket watch. After he left, I found a piece of paper folded into my pocket. It must have come from the archives, because none of us had access to personal computers or printers. The paper looked old, wan, like it came from a vintage book from the 1970s. It was a photo of a clay tablet, half excavated from an archaeological dig. It even had those small measurement markers around it. And on the tablet were drawings of primitive human figures. They were looking up at the sky, and above them were other beings with enlarged heads and diminutive bodies. Beings coming down from the stars. I destroyed the paper immediately. I couldn't risk being caught with it. I don't know if Captain Gale thought he was helping me, or if he just needed someone to share the burden with him. I never got the chance to ask. We were close, too close. Orion left. The first red flag was when the audio transmissions wouldn't work. The rest of the ship's systems seemed functional from what we could monitor back at the base. We weren't expecting to receive the first recordings for a couple of weeks. We did, however, receive more visitors in the meantime. More recovered artifacts. I was assigned to analyze audio emissions from various objects. Spinning orbs that operated without power sources, metallic components that resonated at impossible frequencies, a flat black disc 30 feet across that absorbed all sound within its vicinity. Things that felt wrong. The first transmission we received from Orion was beautiful. Dr. Winters let me listen. Harmonic oscillations of stellar bodies, the gentle hum of space itself, the rhythmic pulsing of distant nebulae, each captured with scientific precision and artistic sensitivity, but not what we were looking for. Back to silence, back to work, back to small gray corpses and empty corridors. The next batch of transmissions was more unsettling. Again, the first few were stunning. The acoustic signature of Earth from a distance, solar wind vibrations, the subtle resonance of Jupiter's moons. Something in the next one. A faint pattern, inorganic. A ship. No amount of filtering could make it clear, though. In silence again. I was slipping up, losing time. I'd look up and hours would have passed. Falcon told me I'd be released from my assignment at the conclusion of Orion's mission. I wondered if that meant I'd be eliminated. Orion relayed more recordings. A perfect acoustic signature of a non-human spacecraft, just like the ones we had here. Something had compressed it so tightly around the middle that it had split in half. Bodies floating in space, their final vibrations captured by Orion's sensors. Twisted, squat bodies. Another mangled ship. A recording of Orion itself. How? Falcon demanded to know how. I don't know, I told him. I didn't teach them how to do that. More objects arrived at the facility, more frequently and in greater numbers. I was busier than ever, more isolated than ever. Sometimes I didn't even have time to decontaminate between rooms before a faceless voice over the intercom would direct me to the next assignment. I was called to record an autopsy. No time for protective gear. The intercom insisted. Had to go in with the hollowed carcass. It was peeled open, skin and ribs like the petals of a fleshy flower. Each organ had been carefully placed in a container, ready for documentation. Being near the body made my skin tingle. Not from nervousness, I was used to the dead by now. The body was having a physical effect on me. Strange tones filled my ears when I blinked. I moved closer. Nestled in the open cavity of its chest was a watch, slick black with congealed fluid. It was my grandfather's watch. I felt dizzy, burning. Shaking, I activated my recorder before stumbling into the hallway to vomit. How? So many people were asking, interrogating me like I would have an answer. How? I had to take a polygraph. It had my watch. I don't know how. Captain Gale had my watch. From Earth, everything aboard Orion seemed normal, except for the audio communications. Days passed. My skin reddened, dried, and flaked off like a radiation burn. They must have decided to trust me again, because I returned to work. There was another body. My watch again, found among its organs. I was asked more questions I couldn't answer. I asked them how many versions of my watch they'd already discovered. They told me I didn't have high enough clearance to know. More recordings from Orion. Another signature of a spacecraft. A different one. This one was flattened completely. A piece of twisted metal fell into the Pacific Ocean, identified as belonging to Orion. But our Orion was still up there in space. Someone in the organization recovered the Orion from where it crashed in the Antarctic ice. But we kept receiving transmissions from the ship. From our monitors, everything aboard Orion seemed fine. The acoustic arrays captured 1,000 copies of Orion, floating like sleeping whales. Thousands of suspended bodies, humanoid. And something else was there. Not a black hole. A black hole can't listen back. But it was taking things in. Consuming things. Satellites, moons. Copying them, crushing them, spitting them back out. Changing them. Those mangled bodies, those cigar-shaped ships. Each one was from Earth, weren't they? Each autopsy performed on some version of Dr. Winters, Captain Gale, and Major Storm. It was all them. It was always them. And I helped put them up there with that thing, in my own small way. Nobody had answers, at least none they were willing to share. One lost transmission. Silence, interrupted only by a horrifying, warm little sound. I could feel it listening back to me, radiating malevolence. We never received another transmission from Orion. My assignment was over. They let me leave. Who would believe me? Who did I have left to tell? Here's the thing, I'm dying. Terminal brain disease, one of a kind. Doctors say they've never seen anything like it. It reminds them of something they'd see in someone exposed to exotic radiation. Must be why the government used me to record instead of someone more valuable. Before I go, I need someone to carry this burden with me. I don't have answers for everything I heard, every rumor shared. But I heard enough. It was us that we were studying. Orion and her crew returned to Earth, butchered and broken, and reassembled into something new. There were never any aliens. But there is something out there. Something we're monitoring in secret. Something that uses the vibrations of time and space as instruments of torture. And I know one thing for certain. In every recording, it was getting closer to Earth. So what do you think? Is there something watching us from the darkness between the stars? Something that's sending back distorted echoes of ourselves? Share your theories in the comments below. If this cosmic horror story kept you on the edge of your seat, you're in luck. I've already prepared more material for your nightmares. Don't forget to hit the like button, share with a friend who needs a good scare, and subscribe to Broader Tales for daily doses of the strange and unexplained. And right now, we're returning to deep space, to a station orbiting around an unknown planet. Getting assigned to Outpost Helios was supposed to be my big break. After 6 years of maintenance jobs on overcrowded Earth stations, the opportunity to work on a remote research station orbiting the newly discovered exoplanet Proxima 7 felt like winning the lottery. The pay was triple my usual rate, and the experience would look impressive on my resume when I returned home. My transport ship docked at Helios after 3 weeks in cryosleep. The station itself was impressive from the outside, a gleaming silver structure against the inky void, with Proxima 7 looming large in the background. The planet was beautiful in a haunting way, swirling with purple and blue atmospheric patterns, unlike anything I'd seen in the standard planetary catalogs. Commander Tawes met me at the airlock. She was tall and stern, with close-cropped gray hair and eyes that seemed to evaluate everything they landed on. Not unfriendly, but measured, like someone who'd seen enough to know better than to get too comfortable. "Welcome to Helios, Technician Riley," she said, extending a hand that I shook perhaps too eagerly. "Your quarters are in Section D. Rest up today. Orientation starts tomorrow at 600 station time." My quarters were small but efficient. A narrow bunk, a desk with a terminal, and a tiny shower unit. Nothing luxurious, but I hadn't expected luxury 400 million miles from Earth. I spent that evening reviewing station schematics on my tablet, feeling a sense of achievement that had eluded me for years. The next morning, Tawes handed me a small, worn datapad. "Station protocols," she explained. "Standard stuff mostly, maintenance schedules, emergency procedures, communication protocols." I scrolled through what looked like typical station guidelines until page 37. The text there appeared older somehow, rendered in a different font from the rest of the document. The header read, "Void protocols. Never respond to signals between 200 and 400 station time. If the planet's surface illuminates completely, remain in your quarters with visual shields activated. Should you feel a presence behind you in the corridors, continue walking at a steady pace. Do not turn around." I looked up at Tawes, waiting for the punchline. This had to be some initiation prank for new crew members. But Tawes wasn't smiling. "These seem unusual," I ventured. Tawes' face remained impassive. "Follow them and you'll be fine," she said simply, then changed the subject to my maintenance duties. I met the rest of the crew that day. Just 7 people total on a station built for 30. Dr. Weiss, the lead scientist, was particularly memorable. She was brilliant but distracted, her words tumbling out between long pauses, as if she was constantly processing something more important than our conversation. "The planet's quite fascinating," she said when I asked about her research. "We're studying anomalous radiation patterns in the atmosphere. Completely unique properties. Nothing like it in any catalog." Her eyes darted past me as she spoke, looking at something over my shoulder. When I turned to see what had caught her attention, there was nothing there. Just the empty corridor. The first week passed without incident. I fixed environmental systems, recalibrated sensor arrays, and generally settled into station life. The work was straightforward, and despite the strange protocols and the skeleton crew, I started to feel at home. Then came the signals. I was working late in the communications hub, replacing filter modules that had degraded faster than expected. The station clock read 1:56. I planned to finish before 200, remembering the strange protocol about signals during early morning hours, though I still half believed it was some elaborate joke. At exactly 200, the communications array lit up. Not the usual soft blue of incoming transmissions from Earth, but a harsh, pulsing red. The sound came through the speakers, not static, not voices, but something in between. Like whispers run through a broken modulator, creating patterns that almost resembled words. My hand hovered over the response control panel. Standard procedure for any unknown signal was to send the automated identification beacon, but the protocol specifically said not to respond. The signals grew more insistent. Patterns emerged in the chaos, rhythms that felt familiar somehow, like a half-remembered song. My head started to ache as I listened, and I found myself leaning toward the control panel. My fingers were inches from the response key when the door hissed open behind me. Taz stood there, her face like stone. "Your shift ended 4 minutes ago, Technician Riley," she said evenly, eyes flicking to my hand near the controls. I pulled back as if burned. "I was just finishing up," I stammered. "Some tasks are better left for morning," she replied, her gaze unreadable. "Get some rest." That night I couldn't sleep. The signals had felt so compelling, like they were meant specifically for me. I tossed in my bunk, the whisper static playing on repeat in my mind, until I finally drifted off near dawn. Dr. Weiss found me in the mess hall the next day. She looked worse than usual pale, with dark circles under her eyes. "Did you hear them last night?" she asked without preamble, her voice low. I hesitated, then nodded. "They get stronger," she said, staring into her coffee cup. "The longer you're here, the more you understand them." "What are they?" I asked. She looked up, her eyes focusing on me properly for the first time. "We don't know, but they started when we began deep scans of the planet's core." She leaned forward. "The planet shouldn't exist, Riley. Its mass doesn't match its size. Its orbit is too stable for its position. She trailed off, glancing around the empty mess hall as if someone might be listening. "It's what?" I pressed. "It's like it's watching us," she whispered. Later that day, I was checking the observatory dome when I saw Proxima 7 in full view for the first time since arriving. The planet filled the reinforced glass viewports, its swirling atmosphere mesmerizing. As I watched, the cloud patterns seemed to shift, not with the random movement of weather systems, but with purpose, like ink forming symbols. I blinked, and the patterns returned to normal. Just my imagination, I told myself, and the lack of sleep from the night before. That night, I woke suddenly at 3:15. My quarters were dark, except for a faint purple glow coming through the small viewport. I rolled over and froze. Proxima 7 was illuminated, the entire visible surface glowing with an unnatural brightness. The void protocol flashed in my mind. If the planet's surface illuminates completely, remain in your quarters with visual shields activated. I scrambled out of bed and hit the shield control. Metal panels slid over the viewport, blocking the light. But I'd already seen it. The way the planet's surface had been arranged in patterns that looked disturbingly like a massive eye, pupil contracted, staring directly at the station. My terminal pinged with an incoming message. "Dr. Weiss, did you see it?" she'd written. "It's never been this bright before." I started to type a response when an alarm blared through the station. Not the fire alarm or the pressure breach warning. This was the proximity alarm. Something was outside the station. The station-wide comms crackled to life. Taw's voice was tense but controlled. "All personnel maintain your positions. This is a level 3 lockdown. I repeat, maintain your current positions. The next morning, Dr. Weiss didn't show up for breakfast or lunch. By dinner, rumors were circulating among the skeleton crew. She'd been reassigned. She was sick in her quarters. She'd requested emergency transport back to Earth. I asked Tawes directly during my evening report. "Dr. Weiss has been transferred," she said, not meeting my eyes. "It happens sometimes. The isolation gets to people." But that night, I found Weiss's access card abandoned in the observatory. Next to it was a small personal recorder. I shouldn't have taken it, shouldn't have listened to it, but something compelled me. Her voice was rushed on the recording, breathing ragged. "It's responding to our scans. Every probe we send, every scan we run, it's learning from us. The protocols weren't created as scientific guidelines. They're survival mechanisms. Tawes knows. She's been here since the beginning. The planet isn't just unusual, it's awake. And it's hungry. I broke protocol tonight. I responded to the signals. I thought I could communicate, understand. But now I can hear it inside my head. It's calling me to the airlock. I don't think I can. The recording cut off." I sat in my quarters, the recorder clutched in my sweating hand. This was insane. Planets don't wake up. They don't communicate. They don't hunger. But the next day, Weiss's quarters had been completely emptied. It was as if she'd never existed, except for the recorder hidden under my mattress. I started noticing other things after that. How the station seemed to reconfigure overnight. Corridors that led one place in the evening would take me somewhere else entirely the next morning. how certain crew members would go silent mid-conversation, their eyes glazing over as they stared past me at nothing. And the footsteps, I began hearing them 3 weeks in. The distinct sound of boots on metal grating following behind me in corridors I knew were empty. I remembered the protocol. Should you feel a presence behind you in the corridors, continue walking at a steady pace. Do not turn around. I followed this rule religiously, fighting every instinct to look back. The footsteps would follow me for exactly 17 steps, and then stop, no matter how long the corridor. I confronted Taz about it all finally, barging into her office with Weiss's recorder as evidence. "What's happening on the station?" I demanded. "What happened to Weiss? What are these protocols really about?" Torres didn't seem surprised by my outburst. She simply sighed, looking suddenly much older than before. "The protocols protect us," she said quietly. "This station has been here for 15 years. 9 different crews. The ones who follow the protocols survive their rotations. And the ones who don't?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "The void takes what it wants," she said, echoing words from my nightmares. I should have requested transfer that day. Should have found a way to leave, protocol or no protocol. But something kept me there, a growing fascination with the planet below, with the signals that I now heard even during daylight hours. 1 month later, I found something new in the void protocols on my datapad. A rule I was certain hadn't been there before. "You are part of the cycle now. You must stay." The text glowed faintly, pulsing in time with my heartbeat. I dropped the pad like it had burned me, but the words were already seared into my mind. That night the signal came again, stronger, clearer. It no longer sounded like static. It was a voice, one voice made of thousands, speaking directly to me. I understood it now, understood what it wanted. I found myself walking toward the airlock in the middle of the night, something pulling me forward like a hook behind my ribs. I might have kept going if I hadn't literally bumped into Taz in the corridor. "It gets everyone eventually," she said, her eyes knowing. "The key is to resist long enough for your replacement to arrive." "Replacement," I echoed. The next day, a transport ship docked. A young woman stepped out, bright-eyed and eager, just as I had been 3 months earlier. Taz introduced her as Technician Zhang, my assistant. I watched from a distance as Taz handed her the datapad with the protocols. Watched her face as she read through them, the familiar skeptical smile forming on her lips. I wanted to warn her, wanted to tell her to get back on the transport ship immediately. But I didn't, because the void was watching and the rules were clear. She was unknowingly part of the cycle now, and I just prayed she would follow the protocols better than I had. Thank you for listening till the end. I hope you were able to relax and will now get a good rest. And don't worry, new stories are already on the way for tomorrow. So don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to stay connected. Now, have a good night. See you in the next episode.